All right, someone should pray for us, I beg. Amen.
Thank you, Father, for the opportunity to gather here again. Thank you for the grace you've given us throughout the last week. We pray, O God, that as we gather together to learn, you will give us understanding and help us to know exactly that which we ought to. I pray that you guide our learning. Help us, O God, to be able to use this as an important tool to propagate and make known your word known to the world. Thank you for our experience. In Jesus' name.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's class. So, like we said last week, what we'll do is the first 30 minutes we'll have the talk, and then we'll have questions and answers later. And then we'll head over to review the book that we're reading. Last week we gave an introduction to apologetics, what it is, and why it is something that we should do. I'm sure that it was well understood. Now, this is still part of our introductory series. So we're still looking at the basics, the introduction to what we would like to call Christian apologetics. So today we're going to be looking at worldviews. I'm sure that you've heard that thing being said, this is my worldview, or what is your worldview, that kind of thing. Now, what a worldview is a system through which everybody looks at the world. It's like a lens, right? So if you came in here with a lens that was tinted green, if you looked at a whiteboard, it's going to look greenish. It's the way you look at Sprite. When you see Sprite outside the bottle, you may think that Sprite is a green drink. But when you pour Sprite out, you see that it's actually not a green drink. The only thing that makes it look green is the bottle through which you are looking at it. So that's what a worldview is. It's like a lens that you have that colors how you view the world. Right? So everybody has that lens on. It is how we view the world. And I am saying that when we talk about the important issues of life, issues of faith and belief systems and religion, every religion provides a worldview. In fact, every faith system provides a worldview. Now, the reason I made that statement is because some people have said that atheism is a religion, and atheists have come out to say that no, atheism is not a religion. So when you say you are atheist, you are just trying to say that you do not believe in the existence of God. So they tell you stuff like, atheism does not affect me. It's not a worldview. It's just a word that describes my psychological state with respect to the belief in God. Now, that's just silly. And I'm going to explain why. So, they say that and they make it look like we're the same. I just don't believe that God exists. But that's not true. Because as we would see, atheism has implications for every other thing you see in life. Right? Now, maybe let me address that point before moving on. So, when someone says that I'm an atheist, I just lack a belief in God, right? The way to catch them is simple. You ask them a few questions, which we'll maybe be dealing with next time we meet. We're going to be looking at questions, so please just remind me. We're going to be looking at questions and how to engage. So, is to ask them a few questions. For example, or number one, A, God exists. B, God does not exist. C, I don't know. Which one are you closer to? If the person says, I don't know, then the person is not an atheist, the person is agnostic. But if the person is an atheist and is a thinking atheist, the person should say, I think God does not exist. Right? So when you say, you believe God does not exist, what you are saying is, you are not just saying that I lack a belief in the existence of God. You are saying I have a positive belief in the fact that God does not exist. And the both of them are not the same. Let me explain again. I don't believe in Santa Claus, for example. That does not make me a Santa Clausian. It's not I don't use it to describe who I am. Now that's a negative belief system. But when you have a positive belief system, it is something that defines who you are. So you say, I do not believe that God exists. Now, belief in God and belief in Santa Claus are not the same on any level. For many reasons, they are not the same. Right? But the point would be that the atheists don't just have an absence of belief. There's actually a positive belief in the fact that God does not exist. So, if you say that you believe that God does not exist, then I'm going to be asking you for reasons why you believe that God does not exist. You see, what that does is that it shows them that this is not just a negative, it's not just an absence of a belief, it is actually the presence of a belief. There is something that you hold on to. And if you hold on to this thing you hold on to, then you should have reasons for why you're holding on to it. If you don't have reasons for why you're holding on to it, then you just don't want to accept the fact that God exists. It's not because you've thought it through and now that you've explored the options, you have come to see that Christianity is stupid and it's better to be an atheist. That's usually what they want to make you think, but that's usually not what it is. It's usually that most of them don't want to believe in the fact that God exists. Like, we're listening to that interview yesterday, and Frank Turek, I don't know if you know Turek. Someone asked Turek, what do you think is the most, what have you seen is the major reason why people don't want to accept that God exists? Because Turek does it a lot. When he gives his talks, he engages with the people, and he has these short one-on-one debates with these people. And one of the things that Turek usually asks is, if Christianity were true, would you believe it? It's one of the questions he asks. If it turns out that Christianity is true, are you going to believe? And most of the people say no. Or they give a vibe that says no. And he asks why? And he said that he found that the most common answer among young people was because they said that they don't want anybody telling them how to behave sexually. So sex is the most important reason why people don't follow God. Life is hard, man. Yeah, they want to live their lives the way they want, right? So usually when atheists tell you that kind of thing, that is just a lack of belief in God. That's not what it is. It's actually a positive belief in the fact that God does not exist, right? And as we'll see, this does a lot more than they think it does. So the worldview is the framework or a set of fundamental beliefs through which we view the world. It's a framework or is a set of fundamental beliefs through which we view the world. Now, see, it is what helps you to understand reality. It helps you to understand reality. And what it does is that it forms a framework, it forms a foundation, it forms a grounding for most of the important decisions you are going to make. It forms a foundation for most of the other beliefs that you're going to make, to have, or to hold. Now, let me make this clear. There's something that is called properly basic beliefs. Properly basic beliefs. Properly basic beliefs, like it's a philosophical term, but those beliefs are beliefs that you do not have to have explanations for to believe them. And not every belief falls into that category. But there are certain beliefs that you don't have to have explanations for to believe them. For example, if someone came to you, Juliet, now, and told you that, Juliet, do you know that actually, this reality as you know it does not exist? Actually, you're a worm, but you're dreaming a dream. And in the dream, all of these things is happening. What are you going to say? What's your proof that that thing he said is not true? You don't have proof, don't worry. You see, you don't have proof to say that you are not a lizard that is having a dream that you're a human being. There's no proof for it. Do you get the point? I'm saying that it's not every belief that you can have proof for. It's not every belief you can have proof for. The fact that you're a human being, the fact that your mind is not the only mind there is out there, the fact that you are not the product of a brain sitting in a test tube that is being stimulated, you don't have any proof for it. Because for you to have proof of that, you're going to have to use your brain to arrive at that proof. And I'm trying to tell you that this your brain is not your brain. It is part of a complex construct. It's like the Matrix. You know how the Matrix was? It was like a different reality from this reality. So how do you know you're not in a Matrix? How do we know that as we crossed over from 2019 to 2020, all of us did not enter into one reality? And the world is happening as it is happening in the outer reality. And we are here in this new reality where there's coronavirus. You see, you can't say anything to that. That's because it's a properly basic belief. Now, some philosophers have argued that the belief in God is properly basic. That you don't have to be able to explain it, or to give reasons, or to give proof for it. That's how seriously they take it. So I'm saying that what we do with our worldviews is that they form the foundation for other beliefs that we hold and actions that we take. So that your reason for holding on to a belief can be because of another belief. So I believe that killing is wrong, for example, because I believe that the Bible says so. And I believe that the Bible says so is the authentic word of God. I believe that what the Bible says is the authentic word of God because I believe in the fact that Jesus Christ came, lived, died, he was buried, and he rose. So you see, if you trace it back that way, you would see that all of your beliefs has a prior belief behind that belief. But it gets to a point where there is no belief behind that belief. It is that initial point that actually forms the thing that is called your worldview. Do you get the point? And I'm saying that with Christianity provides a worldview. Islam provides a worldview. Atheism provides a worldview. What people call naturalism or materialism, they provide worldviews. There are all sorts of worldviews. Buddhism, we can look at all of that. Buddhism, Hinduism, those Eastern religions, they all provide worldviews that people used to interact with reality. They used to explain reality, and they used to have other beliefs. You get the point? So we'll look at that as we go on. All right. So how is a worldview formed? Usually, a worldview is formed initially by an idea. First of all, you have an idea. This idea goes down. If it's given enough attention, there is an ism that comes out of that idea. Now, when I say an ism, when we say theism, that's belief in God, right? When we say deism, that's different from theism, but belief in God, that's theism. Naturalism, that's belief in nature. Materialism, belief in materials. So by the time when you say isms, most of the times when people use isms, they don't use them in good ways. Yeah, most of the time they don't use them in good ways. For example, I can tell you that there is something called intellectualism. Intellectualism is wrong because in intellectualism, everything boils down to the intellect. But that does not mean that I don't use my intellect, for example. Do you get the point? So in naturalism, they say everything is nature. I am not a naturalist, but I don't deny the existence of nature. Do you get the point? So what people do is that ideas usually propagate into this thing, or what you want to call an ideology, right? What you would like to call an ideology, and then from there people have worldviews. So that worldviews do not originate on their own. It's not like something you stumble into. Everybody's worldview was peculiarly and carefully crafted. Maybe not by you, but by somebody. And I was saying last week about how movies do this kind of thing. They are watching a movie and they just subtly sneak in something that you are not supposed to see or you don't agree with. And it's not very outward. It's just there. Maybe for 30 seconds of the 2-hour movie. And that's it. And a lot of times that was the intent of the movie in the first place. So that's how worldviews are formed. What this would mean is that you are going to need to guard your mind to the ideas that enter into your mind. Because at every point in time where you receive an idea, you are actually shaping or reshaping your worldview. So that it's very easy, and let me not talk about this table. It's a sensitive table. But a lot of times, people's worldviews when they're about to get married or when they're getting married. That's when you know. In fact, someone was telling me lately that part of the reasons that people started having 2 dresses for wedding is because there's the wedding dress for the church, then there's the wedding dress for the after church. So because we know that church is going to examine, they're going to inspect your gown. So you take a very good gown and everything. In fact, someone was even telling me that now they are detachable gowns. So you have the gown. Oh, you know about it. So by the time you're coming out of the church, you can just detach, and you're good to go. A lot of times, the worldviews that we hold come out when we are under pressure. You can be an okay person normally. How we will know what you really believe is in the face of pressure. Where you know that if you don't cheat in this exam, you are going to fail. You know that you have not read. You know that there's nothing you can do. Right? You also know that if you cheat, they will not catch you. It's in that kind of place that we're going to know what your decision, what your worldview is, what you hold to. Those are the things that worldviews do for us. They inform our reality and the way we interact with the world. Alright, so there are 4 primary things that a worldview addresses. And we're going to be looking at a few of them very briefly. A worldview addresses origin. It addresses meaning. It addresses morality. And it addresses destiny. So the origin question talks about where did we come from? Where did we come from? Where did we come from? Meaning talks about why am I here? Why am I here? Morality speaks of how am I meant to live my life? And destiny speaks to where am I going from here? So origin, where am I from? Meaning, why am I here? Morality, how am I meant to live my life? And destiny, where am I going to from here? These are the 4 major things that every worldview addresses. Now, they may not address them while crafting the worldview, but you see, if you're going to live consistent with the worldview that you hold, it's going to have to touch on these 4 things. Right? It's going to have to touch on these 4 things. So what we're going to do is we're going to explore a few faith systems, because Nigerians don't like us to call it religion. So let me respect your sensitivity. We're going to explore a few world religions and see how they line up with respect to these 4 questions. So I'm thinking, okay, so this is what we'll do. World religions are categorized into, let's say, 2. They are the monotheistic religions and the polytheistic religions. So you have monotheism. Monotheism is the belief in one God, right? It's just one God. So that's monotheism, one God. Then there's polytheism. Polytheism believes in many gods, right? Then there is pantheism. Okay, so now this is the difference. Monotheism believes in one God. Polytheism believes in many gods. Pantheism believes that everything is God. Everything is God. You know that song? The one you're thinking about. Yeah. You know the song. Yes. You know, a lot of times people focus on our brother that did it. They don't say that another Oyibo somebody did. That thing is not. And I understand where the song came from. I don't think he was, or they were trying to be pantheistic. I think that they were just trying, Jesus is everything to me, right? Jesus is everything to me is different from Jesus is everything. They're not the same thing, but I think that that's where they come from. So I can excuse it and I can sing it. But if you are singing it, you have to sing it with sense, right? I'm not going to throw the song away just because he's not a philosopher, right? So we have to cut them some slack sometimes. Why are you looking like that? So there's pantheism. Pantheism believes that everything is God. So you see, the difference between monotheism, polytheism, and pantheism is that in monotheism, we have a personal God. Do you understand? In polytheism, we have personal gods. In pantheism, there is no personal God. God is impersonal. You see, all of us here, we are part of God. No, we're not gods. We are part of God. Do you get the point? Now, okay, so maybe we should even explore pantheism. What the pantheists are the Eastern religions, Hinduism, Buddhism, right? What they say a lot of times is part of the reason why they believe in karma, right? Because karma is not English. Karma is from the East. You understand? Yes, they tell you that what happens to you in this life, or what you do in this life, is what is going to determine what happens to you in the next life. So because you're a part of God, you don't die in that sense. When you die, you move into a different state. I'm trying to tell you what pantheists believe. When you die, you move into a different state, right? And in that state, you can just write the question down. In that state, you come back. So it's the whole cycle of living and reincarnation, living and reincarnation, living and reincarnation, living and reincarnation, right? And what happens to you in the next life is dependent on what you do in this life. So they tell you stuff about karma. Karma always catches up with you. In the next life, you may come as a rat. If you come as a rat, maybe it's because you're a really horrible person in that life. So if you come as a rat in this life and you do well as a rat, the next life you may come as a dog. So you see, you keep coming, and that keeps happening until you reach nirvana. Nirvana is the state where you are perfect. You live a perfect life. You're just perfect. When that happens, you enter into a plane. In that plane, you are not coming back again. You have become one with the universe. It's a very nonsense thing, but that's what they believe, right? So there's no personal God. There's no personal God in pantheism. In monotheism and polytheism, you have a personal God or personal gods. Do you understand? Now, in monotheism, there are three religions. There's Islam, there's Judaism, and there is Christianity under monotheism. Under polytheism, you have some of the Eastern religions. So, you see, when we talk about Hinduism and Buddhism, that's a very broad thing. There are actually religions under them. You understand? Like Hinduism, for example, there are religions under Hinduism that are different. Some of them are polytheistic, some of them are pantheistic on both ends. Your African traditional religion is polytheistic. So, like, Yoruba mythology, there is Olodumare, then there are other minor gods. I'm sure that's how it is in your end too. So there are different gods that steward over different parts of reality. That's polytheism. It's almost what you see in Marvel movies. Anyway, so that's polytheism right there. Now, the reason why I don't exactly want us to deal with polytheism is because polytheism does not make sense. It self-destructs. And let's deal with all of them. So we'll deal with atheism, we'll deal with Islam, we'll deal with Christianity, we'll deal with naturalism, and then we'll talk about polytheism. How polytheism does not make sense at all. Maybe let me start from polytheism so we can wrap it up. Now, this is one of the arguments. If there is God, I was thinking we should do logic before this, but no, I think we should do this for logic. But I'm sure you guys can follow me. Now, when we say God exists, we are saying that God is the greatest conceivable being. That's the definition of God. God is a maximally great being, right? What that will mean is that God has all of the positive attributes in an infinite degree. So God is infinitely love, He's infinitely just, He's infinitely kind, He's infinitely merciful, forgiving, in that sense. So that's basically what theologians and philosophers, that's the definition they use. God is a maximally great being. God is the greatest conceivable being. Now, this argument is to show that there can only be one God. If we say that God is the greatest conceivable being, it would mean that in this being that is called God, everything that is correct is in Him to a maximal degree. Right? Do you follow up to this point? Everything that is correct is in Him to a maximal degree. Now, how do you have another God? The only way to have another God is to have two beings that have maximally great attributes. But you can't have two beings that have maximally great attributes, because the only way to be maximally great is if you are maximally great. And if you are going to differentiate between God A and God B, you are going to have to differentiate on one of the maximally great attributes at least. So the only way to differentiate between God A and God B would be that God A has this thing that God B does not have, or he has it in this degree that God B does not have, or God B has one bad thing that God A does not have. You are only able to differentiate between them if there is a difference between them. Now, if there is a difference between them, it would mean that one of them is not God, because one of them is not the greatest. That is why you cannot have many gods. Do you get it? You don't get it. You're still waking up. Okay. So you see these two chairs, ba? These two chairs are identical, right? Now, there's no difference between these two chairs. Like looking at them, they're the same, right? Now, if we say that God is the greatest, it would mean that this God has all of the positive attributes to a maximal degree, to an infinite degree. So, how are you going to differentiate between this God and this God? If this God has everything to a maximal degree, and this God has everything to a maximal degree, how do you differentiate between the both of them? You can't. Right? The only way you can differentiate between the both of them is if this God has something this God doesn't have, or has more of something. It would mean that this God is actually God, because this God is the greatest and this one is not God. Do you get the point? So so looking at it from that angle, you cannot even have many gods. You can only have one God. You get the point? You can only have one God. And that is okay. So you can only have one God. Do you understand? Now, another thing that is usually said is that one of the reasons we know that there is just one God is because in the polytheistic world, you have different gods that superintend over different areas of reality. So you may have a God of rain. So let's use the Greek mythology, which I'm more conversant with. I don't know your own myths. I don't know what they do. And then there's the God of earth and the God of chicken. You threw earth, chicken came out. And, there was corn too, have you? No, it was sand. Now you pour sand on the water, then the chicken came and spread it. That's how Nigeria was formed. That's Yoruba mythology. Yes. Well, I wouldn't know. He will know. So in the Greek mythology, you have Poseidon, for example, is the god of the sea, right? You have Hermes. Hermes is a baby god, is a messenger god. You have Zeus. Zeus is supposed to be the augur of the pantheon. You have Hades. Hades is the god of the underworld, right? The point was Aries. What? See it now. The point is that if you had different gods that superintend over the universe, you will not have as much regularity in the universe that you have. You get the point? So if like we see in movies, Poseidon was fighting with Zeus, Poseidon can just do something. You understand? Let's say there's a god of viruses now. He can just unleash. You get the point? But the fact that we have regularity in the universe, right? Now, is not exactly proof, but it just shows you what is more likely in the face of this overwhelming regularity. What is more likely is there is one person that superintends over everything. Right? If there are multiple people that superintended over everything, it's going to be very likely that there will be more disorder and chaos than we know now or than we have now. And that's not the case with us, because we have natural laws. And they are called laws because nature obeys these laws every time. The only time that nature does not obey these laws is when God intervenes, right? Or when a supernatural being intervenes. Apart from that, nature obeys these laws every time, every single time. Now, it's not exactly proof, but it's more likely that there's one being that is in charge of the universe than many other little beings. Okay? So, for those reasons, polytheism is a no-go area. Like, if you were thinking, you should not be a polytheist. What that would mean is that of course, pantheism is not, there's no road there. There's no road. You see, because one of the things that pantheists believe is that because we are all part of the universe and we're all part of God, there is no objective good or evil. There's no objective good or evil, right? Everything is acceptable. And they tell you that when you get closer to the zenith of morality, you see that the line between good and evil just blurs and it's just one reality. So they try to tell you that the pain you feel because of evil and suffering is really non-existent. It's not there. It's you that is feeling it. Yeah. They tell you all of those kind. They are the ones, it's those people that subject their body to very crazy things. And because they have meditated to a level, these guys can walk on hot coals and they don't feel any pain. Because they tell you that what is going on in the mind is superior to what's going on in your body. And there's no difference between good and evil. However, we know from our personal experience that there's a difference between good and evil. You see, this is one of the properly basic things. You don't have to be able to defend how we know. We know that evil exists. We know the pain we feel when we lose somebody. For example, someone shot someone to death. You know the pain you feel, right? You can't come and say that it's just in your mind that it exists. There's nothing like that. So you see, it does not line up with reality. It doesn't line up with reality. So that when we are looking at these things, what you would want to focus on a lot of times is on the monotheistic religions. So Islam, Judaism, and Christianity. Now, Judaism and Christianity differ at the point of Jesus Christ and his life, his death, his burial, and his resurrection. If not, we basically believe every other thing to be the same. In fact, our Old Testament is the Bible that Judaists use. This Old Testament we use, not modified, that's the same Bible that they use. And we just go a step further in the New Testament. They don't go into the New Testament. They stop with the Old, or what we call the Old. Alright. So, let's look at origin. Origin. So I said these 4 questions, origin, meaning, morality, and destiny, are the 4 questions that you want to answer with any worldview. Now, looking at origin, where do we come from? Atheist. If you ask an atheist, where do we come from? They tell you that everything began at the Big Bang, right? How is that an answer to where we came from? Well, we don't know, but we know that everything began at the Big Bang. And you see, they can even be very gracious. They can be very gracious. There are many layers of arguments that atheists put up just to disprove the notion that God started the universe. So I've heard some of them say that, which is what the most popular of them, Richard Dawkins. Richard Dawkins concedes that it's possible that life on Earth began because there were aliens that came with spores that contained life and they planted them on Earth and then life germinated on Earth. Now that's just horrible because you are going to have to account for the aliens. Where did the aliens come from? So one of the things you want to do is, when we're talking of origin, we're talking of the origin of the universe and the origin of life. People talk about evolution and all of that. But you see, even if you let evolution slide, you cannot, on an atheistic, naturalistic worldview, you cannot answer the question of where life started. How did life start? Right? Islam believes that Allah created the world, right? Judaïsts believe that God created the world, Yahweh created the world. Christians believe that God created the world. So you can see that Islam, Judaism, and Christianity agree on origin. Meaning, why are we here? Why are we here? So you see, for the atheist, again, the naturalist, they tell you that your meaning is what you make out of life. You decide what life means to you. You make out meaning by yourself. Now, that doesn't do well for two reasons. The first reason is that you were here, right, before you decided to make out what life means. It doesn't work that way. Life has to mean something even if you were absent. Do you get the point? But they are saying that there is no objective meaning to life. You decide what you want to make out of life. Now for that first reason, that doesn't even make any sense. But for the second reason is that what they are trying to say is that everybody's meaning to life is subjective to them. It's inherent to them. So what if I decide that my own meaning, how I'll derive meaning in life is by killing 4-year-old girls? So I go from state to state, nation to nation, killing people, because that's how I want to derive meaning. You see, an atheist cannot tell you that, for example, he's living a fulfilled life objectively. It has to be subject to him. This is what he has set as the goalpost, and he's scoring the goals, and so he's fine. But you don't do that. You cannot decide what you want to be your meaning. That will mean your car one day your car just stands up and says that, you see, actually, I want to derive meaning carrying pure water. Car that you bought with money, millions of naira, decides to be a pure water truck. You see, it's still going to be carrying pure water, it's still going to be moving around, using fuel and everything. But that was not why the car was gotten. Do you get the point? So that we abuse the why question every time we don't refer to the creator of the thing. You can use the cover of your Bible to clean your ear, but that's not why it was created. You get the point? Now, so that's what atheists say about meaning. What do Muslims say about meaning? They tell you that meaning is defined, meaning is localized in Allah's will. Right? What that means is this. If Allah has willed that you are going to suffer, then at 22, you die. That's how you are going to have meaning in life. Yes, that's basically what is localized in Allah's will, in the sense that Allah is the person that determines what your meaning should be. Now, that may sound something close to what Christianity is, but it's not at all. At all. For Christians, what it is that we derive our meaning when we are in the right relationship with God. Do you get the point? For Islam, what it is that God is unknowable, He's out of reach, so He imposes His will on you, and that's what gives you meaning. So whatever He gives you, just take it, that's what gives you meaning. Right? But for Christians, it is not in His will that is imposed upon us. It is not in what He makes us do or gives us to do. It's in our relationship with Him. Do you see the difference? With Islam, there's no relationship. Do you get the point? I was preaching to a Muslim girl one time. We were in NYC camp, so I had 21 days, like 20 days to preach to her. So I took it step by step. And one of those days, she asked me, "Why are you so happy this morning?" I'm like, "You're not going to get it." She was like, "Try me." I said, "Nah, you won't understand." She said, "Try me." I said, "Man, I just finished having this amazing time with God." And she was looking at me like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "Yeah, I said you won't get it." And then I hit her. And I said, "Unlike you, I have a relationship with my Creator." You see, it actually got to her. Long and short of the story is that the girl eventually got saved. But for Muslims, don't have relationship, there is no relationship. Your meaning in life comes out of whatever is foisted upon you. You get the point? But for Christians, that's not what it is. For Christians, it's in our right relationship with Him. That's why even if you are suffering, if that relationship is there, you are fine. Everything may be going on around you that is wrong, but there's something in you that keeps on going and it's fine. Do you get the point? So for Christians, that's how we derive meaning. So we said atheism, Islam, Christianity, Judaism, almost the same thing, right? On that level. Morality, how do you live your life? So atheists tell you that you do what you want. You are the sole arbitrator of whatever you think is right and good, right? That's what the extreme ones will tell you. The ones that are not too extreme will tell you that whatever you do, you should ensure that it helps the society to progress. Right? So we're saying that you should do good things, not because there's an objective standard of good and wrong, but because good is what will help all of us. You get the point? So the question to ask is, why should I want to help all of us? Why is it good to help all of us? You just tell me that it's good to help all of us. Why is it good to help all of us? Because at the end of the day, this world is going to end. I mean, science has shown that the world is running out of energy. So this world is going to finish one day. Everything is going to pack up. So why are we progressing to an end that is going to finish at the end? What's the point? So you see, they don't have an answer to that question. Right? Muslims tell you that morality is whatever God dictates. Whatever God says, that's what you do. That's what it means to be moral. Right? Christians tell you that our morality is sourced in the nature of God. And I'm sure that you've heard about the Beautiful dilemma, where they say, is something good because God commanded it, or does God command something because it is good? So this is a good time to answer that question. Juliet.
Why is he always speaking?
Do you know Balotelli? Beautiful dilemma. So can you try to attempt the question? Is something good because God commands it, or does God command it because it is good?
God is good.
Yeah, I know you know the answer. So, but what's the problem with either of those options?
The problem.
Yeah.
You want me to answer? I've answered nothing.
No. No, you've not answered. You just told me what the answer is. But you see this question, you know them Socrates, them Aristotle, they suffered on top of this question. Sometimes I used to want to think that those guys were not wise, but they were. What's the problem with either of those options? Why can't we say? Because that's what the Muslim says. The Muslim says that good is what God commands. When God commands something, you do it. That's why they can kill you. Because God can command that they kill you. And then they kill you. And they are doing good. That's morality for them. How are you different from a Muslim?
Because I derive my, should I say that? Like in this chapter 4, what I read, we talked about God moving your hands and teaching you. So we love because there is love in God. So if we derive our essence from God, what am I saying?
What I want you to tell me is what is wrong with those two options. God commands a thing because it is good. A. B. A thing is good because God commands it. Two of them are wrong. I know you know. But why are they wrong? Long T. You want to try? You don't want to try? Margaret. Our mama. God commands a thing because it is good. What that tells you is that there is a standard of morality that God refers to. Right? So God commands it because it is good. What it would mean is that there is a standard of morality that is external to God. Do you get it? If God commands it because it is good, it's because God has seen that it is good, then God is now commanding it. But the only way God can see that it is good to command it is because something has determined that it is good. And whatever that thing is that determines good and wrong, that thing is God. Do you get it?
Yeah.
Now, that's God commands a thing that it is because it is good, right? A thing is good because God commands it. it will be what the Muslims say. What it means is that God can stand up today and tell you to kill everybody in just, and that is going to be good. But you and I both know, like we said earlier, in our experience, we know that that is not going to be good. You get? So, on the one hand, we have a God who is really not God. On the other hand, we have a God who can be malevolent and malicious and evil, which is really not God. Right? Because from our definition of God, He is the locus, He is the greatest conceivable being. Now, a thing is good because God commands it. Not true. God commands a thing because it's good. Not true. What is the answer? God commands a thing because He is good. So our morality is sourced in the nature of God. So we are saying that God is the ultimate standard. He determines what good and wrong is by His very nature. And that is what we must conform to. Does it make sense? Does it make sense? Alright. Destiny, where are we headed? Atheists say that this is the end. They tell you that after this world, that's all. When you sleep, that's it. It's gone. There's nothing more coming on at the end. And you see, this raises a very important question for issues like justice. How can you tell me that someone like Adolf Hitler and Mother Teresa are going to just end it the same way? Right? Now, it's possible that that's what it is. The fact that we don't like how it sounds does not mean that that's not what it is. It's actually possible that after this life, that's it. Because nobody has gone there and come back to tell us. So it's actually possible that after this life, that's it. It's the end. It's finished. Right? But then, the point would be, why is there a quest? Why is there a longing for justice in our hearts? Why? And you see, you can deny it all you want, but everybody knows that deep in your heart, there's that longing for justice. There's that quest for justice. There's that search for justice. Nobody wants to be treated unjustly, for example. So, for issues like justice, destiny is the place where they are brought up. So, there is nothing that stops me on the atheistic worldview. There is nothing that stops me from killing 6 million Jews, right? Because at the end of the day, that's all that is going to happen. Nothing is going to happen. If I'm caught and prosecuted, the worst that will happen is I'll be sentenced to death. But once I'm sentenced to death, that's the end. I'm dead. That's all. It's the end. Right? So, atheism cannot give an answer to issues like justice. They don't have a competent answer for that. Islam, destiny, where are we going to? On the Islamic view, you are going to end up wherever God wants you to end up. That's the Islamic view. When God sees you, He says, Kai, you're dark. You're too dark. Please depart from everlasting kingdom. That's basically, now this is being simplistic, but that's basically what Muslims say. So they tell you that, how do you get to heaven? You do the right things, let your good outweigh your bad, and all of that. They tell you all of that. But if you ask them further, when your good outweighs your bad, is that a guarantee that you're going to get into heaven? They cannot still say yes. They still can't say yes. You've done IZIM Academy, Komojo. Who did you interview? You were supposed to interview someone from a different religion. Who did you interview? An atheist. Oh, you know atheists. I interviewed a particular Muslim twice, and she could not give me the answer. So she was all confident when she said, your good shall outweigh your bad, all of that. And so I'm like, okay, now I did that because I knew the answer. Now, it was an assignment. You're not supposed to preach. You're just supposed to ask them questions. So I'm like, okay, at the end of the day, when your good has outweighed your bad, where are you going to go? And the answer is that it's still left for Allah to decide. Still left for Allah to decide. Now, that's not a God that I'm willing to follow. After you have done your own part, then you now come, he'll now tell you that, no, do you want to gamble with eternity? Do you know that that's part of the reasons, that's part of the reasons that all these holiness people tell you don't wear earring. That's part of the reasons they say the things. Because nobody wants to gamble with eternity, and you should not blame them. What if it's true? If it's true that wearing earring will take you to hell, when you find out, it will be too late, oh. it will be too late. You are wearing weave-on, you enjoy yourself. Then you now die, you now find out that weave-on that they told you. So you see, they play on your fear, and it's actually a legitimate fear that nobody wants to end up on the wrong side of God at the end of the day, right? So don't fight them too much. You can fight the doctrine, but don't fight their heart. Most of them are good people. They just want to be right, and they don't want their children to go to hell. It's not right now. They are wearing skirts. They've not tied their hair all day, but you went to university. You now go to hell because of. It's not. So that's Islam does not have a competent answer to that. It actually shows a God and that's one of the concepts of the Islamic God. The Islamic God is almighty. That's the way we say God is love as Christians, for Islam is God is almighty. What that means is that he does what he wants, when he wants, how he wants. Whatever happens, you hear a Muslim tell you it was the will of God, right? It was the will of God. Now, that's the answer that you get from Islam. From Christianity, the answer that you get is that our destiny is to end up with God and to enjoy him forever. That's the destiny of Christians. From the Christian worldview. And you can decide to not end up with God if you don't want to end up with God. That's what we call hell, or the lake of fire, or whatever you want to call it. But it is a reality that is outside of God. Now, that's basically the 4 questions answered by those faith systems, those faith systems that we know. So, you can see that if you look at these 4 questions objectively, you see that atheism is not sufficient to answer these 4 questions. At the end of the day, the answers don't add up, right? Islam, at the end of the day, when you come to meaning and destiny, you see, even in morality, you see that there are issues. In morality, it may not be very straight up, but if you go a little deeper to think about it, you see that there are still issues with that worldview, right? So, with Christianity, you have the most coherent worldview there is. This does not mean that it is true. It just means that it's coherent. Did you get the point? It just means that it's coherent. But you see, one of the tests for truth is that truth must be coherent. So that if it's not coherent, it cannot be true. Do you get? It cannot be true if it's not coherent. The fact that it's coherent does not automatically mean that it's true. But if it's not coherent, then it cannot be true, right? So that's basically worldviews. So there is what we call postmodernity, and I'm sure you've heard it, the postmodern world, the postmodern world, the postmodern world. Now there's the modern world, there's the postmodern world. The postmodern world is what we live in today. In this postmodern world, issues like reality are questioned. There is no objective truth. So you hear stuff like, I'm going to say my truth, you are going to say your truth, this is my truth, and all those other nonsense things that people say. They tell you stuff like, reality is subjective, it all depends on my perspective, it depends on how I see it, it's my life, I can do whatever I want with it. There are just different ways to capture the postmodern view. That's usually how you see it happen. The modern world was like the 19th century coming into this 20th century. That was where philosophers actually started to do a lot of business with the Bible. You see, if you're coming from history, Jesus died, you have the church fathers, right? And then you come down, you have around the 1100s, then you come into the Dark Ages, right? Then you come into the Renaissance, then you come into maybe what you call our modern world. Philosophy basically kicked God out. Right? Basically kicked God out. But it was around the 1930s, 1940s that people started thinking as Christians again, and then they began to bring God back into the equation. One of the chiefs of that is Alvin Plantinga. Alvin Plantinga he did a lot of work in bringing God back into philosophy and thinking. And so that in that world, what they valued above all was that you can show that something is correct logically. You know that that's not our world now. That's not the world we live in now. In this world now, even if you show something is correct logically, people are not going to answer you. You have to appeal to their emotions. That's the postmodern world. It's more emotional than it is logical. In their days, it was not like that at all. It was more like, if you can show it is true, then you're good. But right now, they're even telling you that truth is not objective. So, it's more about me than about something objective out there. Then, of course, there's scientism, there's naturalism, there's materialism. They are different. The difference between materialism and naturalism, for example, is that naturalism only talks about nature. Naturalism tells you that there's nothing supernatural. Materialism tells you that everything that exists is material. Now, in materialism, they cannot explain things like what we are doing, like words. Words are not material. Thoughts are not material. Ideas are not material. Numbers. Have you ever seen number 1 before? You've never seen number 1. You don't know that thing that is called 1, 2, 3. You've never seen it before. Right? It's an abstract object. They are called abstract objects. They are not material. So you can be a naturalist but not be a materialist. So you're a naturalist and you accept that all of these things exist. But when you're a materialist, then you're saying that these things don't exist, which doesn't make sense. You're telling me that words don't exist. You're using your mouth to tell me with words that words don't exist. But there are people like that. So that's it about worldview.